Hey everyone, this is Nick and welcome to the Linux and Open Source News Show. This week we've got a bunch of stuff. The first one will be KDE and GNOME building their own operating systems, their own distros. It's sort of official on the KDE side and less so on the GNOME one. We also have Manjaro planning to add some telemetry in the distro, which is sure to annoy a lot of people. And we've got Mozilla laying off 30% of their workforce and a bunch of other things, including this message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by TuxCare, a name you probably know if you manage a fleet of Linux workstations or servers. They offer a comprehensive suite of solutions to make sure that all your systems stay up to date and protected, all while reducing downtime to a minimum. For this, they use live patching tools for the Linux kernel, which deploys all the latest patches in the background without needing a reboot. They also offer endless lifecycle support for end-of-life Linux distros, for software languages, and even for development frameworks like Spring. This week, they're giving you a free guide that teaches you how to avoid IT burnout by automating security updates without needing to plan maintenance windows or downtime. The guide goes over why conventional kernel patching is a real issue for IT professionals, how live patching works, including in multi-distro environments, and how you can use live patching to make sure you spend your time on things that really have value for your organization. The guide is free to download without any email or personal information that you need to give them, so click on the link in the description and get the free guide now. So we have some interesting things on official desktop distros this week. We have news about GNOME OS, but also a potential KDE OS. On the GNOME side, a developer wants to turn the existing GNOME OS into something that a regular user could actually use as a day-to-day system. Right now, GNOME OS is for development and testing purposes only. It is not intended at all to be used as a day-to-day system. It lacks a lot of what makes a distro run properly. It's only here for you to test GNOME applications, to develop GNOME applications, or to test the latest version of GNOME, and that's it. Now, the developer behind this proposal wants to bring GNOME OS into a daily distro sort of status, something that would work alongside a few core principles. First, the distro would be flexible and opinionated, so basically like GNOME itself. It needs to run on any device type, but it will reduce the decisions the user can make so they are not overwhelmed with technical details. It will rely on Flatpak as the core of the app distribution. Obviously, like any brand new distro in 2024 or 2025, cannot really rely on anything else. You're not going to create your entirely new packaging system. Flatpak is here, just use it. The system will be immutable as well, with easy rollbacks for updates and a locked file system. And the OS would of course rely on Wayland, Pipewire, Portals, and all the rest of the modern Linux stack, which again makes sense for a brand new system. But this seems like it's just a proposal and an effort from one developer for now, but we'll see how it shapes up. On the KDE side, KDE Linux is a new in-development distro as well. It is not KDE Neon, it's another initiative with different goals, namely having an immutable system. Yes, another one with better FS snapshots. It would be Arch-based, but distributed as tested snapshots, tested images, so you wouldn't get daily updates that could break your system if you don't handle them well. And of course you would get Plasma as the desktop. This would be an official KDE project as far as I can tell, meaning it would be the showcase for KDE technologies and for how KDE wants users to experience their desktop. The distro would aim for Flatpak for its apps as well, and other interesting things include no support for the proprietary NVIDIA drivers out of the box, nor for the VirtualBox drivers, which will obviously limit the appeal of this distro. Now, to be clear, the official open source modules that NVIDIA makes and that are the default for all relatively recent NVIDIA GPUs, these would be supported. You could still run the official NVIDIA drivers on this distribution. If your GPU is not supported by these open source modules though, and it doesn't run with Nouveau, then you basically would be unsupported by KDE Linux. I really like these two initiatives. I do want to see distributions made by the desktop developers. I want an end-to-end integrated system, which lets these desktop developers push their systems to the max and not just try to tack on their desktops onto other distros that might or might not rely on the components the desktop want. I want to see what they can make when they control the entire experience and see if it makes a difference. Now, users of Manjaro might be a bit annoyed to learn that the distro plans to add a new telemetry tool that would be opt-out by default, meaning it would be pre-installed and set to on, and you would have to disable it manually. It's called Manjaro Data Donor, and the goal, as always, is to collect hardware information and environment data on users. So Manjaro developers presumably would be able to know what they want to focus on, what they work on, and which bugs they would fix first, at the very least. Until now, Manjaro already collected at least the number of people using the distro by having systems ping one domain from the main Manjaro, well, one subdomain from Manjaro's domain. But this had issues, notably the fact that it had to collect and store IP addresses, even if it wasn't permanent storage. It was probably just to let the tool aggregate this data and then it would be removed, but it still collected IP addresses, which for privacy isn't that good. The data also wasn't easily accessible to developers or to the community, and so they're replacing this system with a telemetry tool. It's a Python script, it is available on GitHub, so you can check the source and see what it collects. But it collects a lot of stuff. There's the kernel version, the device type, as in laptop, desktop, stuff like that, the install date of the distro, the computer's model, the vendor, and the board name for your motherboard. It also collects info about the uptime, if the system uses UEFI, data on the CPU architecture, exact model and vendor, thread count, also the total RAM amount, all the same hardware data about the GPU as well, so model, vendor, amount of VRAM and things like that, which audio server you're running, how the disk is partitioned, and if certain partitions are encrypted, if there's a Windows dual boot as well, which region, language, and time zone you set, which is the last time you updated your distro, which Flatpaks are installed, which desktop environment or window manager you're using, if you're on Wayland or X11, and more. So for now, it's in testing, the tool has to be installed manually, but plans are to make it the default for all systems as an opt-out, meaning you will have to disable it yourself if you don't want that tool, also meaning that you have to know it exists, so hopefully Manjaro talks about it at the install stage like Ubuntu, and it's just one checkbox to untick if you don't want that. As always, telemetry in open source projects is a relatively hard line to toe. If you do it opt-out like Ubuntu, you get instant criticism from everyone, especially privacy enthusiasts, and if you do it as opt-in like KDE did, well, they said that they just did not collect enough data to really have anything actionable. Any decision that they could make did not have enough data to support it one way or another. It's open source, you can check on that, you're gonna be able to disable it, so if you use Manjaro, if you like it, then it's not going to be a big annoyance. It's gonna be like on Ubuntu, you untick the thing and then you don't have this telemetry being collected, or you can leave it on if you want to share data with Manjaro. It's gonna be up to you. Now this week we have some bad news for Mozilla, as the foundation has now reorganized and they let go of about 30% of their workforce. In an internal memo, the foundation says that they want to increase agility and impact, and that they need to eliminate some roles to refocus on that. It's the usual corporate speak, meaning we missed the mark in terms of revenue and we need to let people go while we find a profitable avenue for us. Most affected by these layoffs is the advocacy team, which focused on privacy, inclusion, and promoting decentralized tech. Admittedly, this is the core of why people really liked Mozilla. Mozilla still says that they will work on these areas, but without a dedicated division, it is hard to take this statement seriously. Mozilla had already parted with 5% of their workforce earlier this year, but it looks like this move, combined with Mozilla's focus on AI, some new Firefox features here and there, and dropping most of their other commercial products, didn't really yield any results, and so they have to keep the layoffs going. Mozilla's executive director says that they're facing an onslaught of change in the tech world, which I don't really know what they're talking about because there's just the AI thing and that's it. And the tech world has always changed really fast, so nothing really is different from when Mozilla started. They are also saying that putting people before profits is increasingly radical. And I hope this last sentence means that Mozilla's mission is getting harder and harder because they don't want to put profits before people. I hope it doesn't mean let's not be radical and let's put profits before people, because that would be a true disappointment. Now, in the end, it looks like non-profits have a really hard time of it recently. GNOME is having trouble raising money. KDE is doing another fundraiser because they are facing the same issues. Mozilla is also facing problems. But I'm not sure layoffs are really the solution. First, they're getting rid of the division that really focused on what people liked Mozilla for, which is advocating for a private, open web, standards, decentralized tech. Getting rid of the team that handles that sends a mixed message. And also, laying people off to refocus on your core business only works if you're not trying to escape your core business. The core business of Mozilla is currently Google paying them to be the default search engine in Firefox. If they want to escape that, laying off people that worked on other things really doesn't work. So I don't know what they're expecting to do here. It's really disappointing to see where Mozilla is going. Personally, I feel that the non-profit is moving further and further away from the goals that I support and that I liked and that they used to defend. They're just moving towards being a regular company that focuses on making the most profit and chasing the latest tech craze or hype, and I'm not sure I like it. Now, on the KDE front, we have some good news, especially for Fedora users, because the KDE spin of this distro will reach edition status for Fedora 42, meaning that the KDE spin of Fedora is no longer a spin. It now has the same status as the regular Fedora GNOME version. This came after a proposal asked for KDE to be made the default in Fedora. Obviously, this had zero chance of succeeding, but it did succeed in making KDE a first-class citizen on Fedora, which is really nice. So the KDE edition will now be listed at the same level as the GNOME edition. Presumably on the downloads page, you'll get two options. It will have its own flagship webpage to showcase Fedora KDE, and it will get similar support as the GNOME version in various Fedora events. This change was unanimous in how it was accepted, so that's pretty good, and of course it's only going to start with Fedora 42, because these changes only take place when the next edition of the distro drops. It's really interesting to see. I honestly was not expecting that to happen. Fedora has always been really more GNOME focused, because Red Hat is GNOME focused, and Fedora is the test bed for the technologies that will be included in the next major version of Red Hat. So they focus on GNOME. Now, having this community around KDE means that there's apparently enough people to make Fedora KDE work, even though Red Hat really does not care about KDE currently. I don't think KDE will ever be the default on Fedora, well, the only edition on Fedora, unless Red Hat also moves to KDE. But right now, there is no more default for Fedora. You have two choices, GNOME and KDE, and I think that's really cool. It's a big move. It would be like if Ubuntu placed Kubuntu at the exact same level as the regular Ubuntu version. That would be big. Now, on the gaming side of things, there's an interesting project for people who don't have a recent GPU but still want to play games on Linux. Currently, really the major way of playing games on Linux is using Steam and Proton relies on DXVK or VKD3D. These are libraries that translate DirectX instructions into Vulkan instructions. And so, to be able to play games using these, you need a Vulkan-capable GPU, and sometimes a GPU that supports a recent Vulkan version, which is not the case of older GPUs. And this is true even for old titles that rely on DirectX 9 and stuff like that. Fortunately, there is a new thing called Proton Sarek. It's a fork of Proton, just like GE Proton is, and it provides patches to improve the performance of Wine D3D, which is the implementation of Wine that doesn't rely on Vulkan to play older DirectX games on Linux, and it also provides older versions of DXVK that older GPUs might support if they have older Vulkan support. They apparently rely on Proton tweaks to achieve that, and some other enhancements around it. They also allow CPU-based rendering for Vulkan for even older titles that wouldn't really need powerful hardware acceleration. Now, as with all Proton-related things, you can install it by dropping it in the compatibilitytools.d folder of your Steam install, and then you can go into the game's preferences and pick that instead of Proton, or you can select that as the system-wide version of Proton you prefer. Just know that it's not gonna yield as good performance for modern titles, so if you don't need that, if your GPU supports the current version of Proton, you really do not need this. And it's a nice project. It should let older computers still play games on Linux without needing a pretty powerful or beefed up GPU. To play the original Diablo 2 or StarCraft or Counter-Strike or stuff like that, you don't need an RTX 4090. This would run perfectly using Wine D3D or probably even software rendering using the CPU. So probably it's a great project for people who have older computers and want to use them to run older games. It's a nice option to have at the very least. And to conclude on today's episode, we have the Steam game recording feature, which is now officially here for everyone. It was already available in beta, but it's now available to every Steam user, unless they use Windows 7 or Windows 8, because these operating systems are no longer supported. So, game recording can be used from the Steam overlay, that thing you can summon by pressing Shift plus Tab, I think, by default. It either lets you grab the latest 120 seconds of your gameplay, this is recorded automatically and kept in the background in case you want it, but you can of course disable that, or you can start a manual recording session with no real-time limit through the overlay or with a hotkey. This thing works with any game, including non-Steam games that you might have added in your Steam library. And Valve developed an API to let game developers access that game recording feature and potentially add special markers to the recording timeline. So when you view your recording, you will see special icons and names indicating things you might have done during the game, and so you can find the interesting moments in your recording and edit the video faster if you want that, or just keep this specific part and share it. You can also drop your own markers on that timeline if you want. You can of course view these recordings from the overlay, you can edit them quickly by cropping them or removing certain parts, and you can save the resulting clips afterwards. I think it's on MP4 format exclusively. Recording settings can be set per game, and these recordings should use your GPU to encode the video if that's possible, so it shouldn't use that much resources, but there will always be a bit of a performance loss in most games, because obviously you're using the GPU to do other things than just rendering the title, so in certain games you will drop a few frames. This new feature probably won't matter for a lot of people. Not everyone wants to record their gameplay or share it with their friends or create let's plays, playthroughs, or clip reels of their gaming sessions, but for people who wanted to do that but found it way too tricky to set up OBS and set up a good format and a bitrate and anything else, then this is a super easy one-click solution that everyone can use. And since on Linux some screen recording programs can be pretty temperamental, using the built-in Steam feature is probably not that bad either. It's also apparently private because it only records the game, not the entire desktop, so it's not gonna show things that you don't want to show. So, interesting thing, it's now available to everyone, and if you use it, let me know how it went. It's probably pretty good, but, well, at least it looks pretty good, but let me know how good it is. What's sure is it's probably not as good as today's sponsor, Tuxedo computers. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux out of the box. All the hardware is tested so that it runs perfectly with Linux. They even contribute patches upstream and write their own drivers to make sure that stuff runs well. All those drivers are open source and available for anyone who wants to compile them and add them to any distro if they haven't been upstreamed just yet. They have a big range of computers from laptops, desktops, workstations, gaming PCs, anything you want. I personally only use their devices. All of these videos are edited, rendered, exported, and published and recorded on one of their laptops with a dedicated GPU, and all my gaming needs are served by one of their desktops. They are a really fantastic option. Go check them out using the link in the description. They've been supporting the channel for, I think, more than 2 years by now. They're really, really good. Anyway, thank you all for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Plenty of cool buttons to click so the algorithm does its thing. You know how things work. And if you really enjoyed the channel, there are plenty of links in the description to support it, and you get some pretty cool perks in the process, including a daily version of this exact same show. So, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one next week. Bye!